as you're finding your seat, you guys are the perfect twice-a-year Jews because you come every Pesach and then you spend the rest of the year down in Florida. But every Pesach, it is good to see you again, and because we also have twice-a-year Jews that live locally, and we miss them throughout the year. So, what a nice morning. I said yesterday, first day, weekday Yontif, Kol V'chomer, all the more so, second day Yontif, weekday, and what a nice crowd this morning. So I've been thinking about Zman Cherutenu, right? That's the holiday that we're at, that the time of our freedom. And I have been struggling with that because I don't feel it. As Rabbi Megdal said, day 200, 201, we are counting for the hostages, for the war that was thrust upon Israel, that I've been struggling with feeling freedom, with feeling at this time that anti-Semitism is on the rise. College campuses are shut down. They're moving to many, not all, but some prominent campuses are shutting down, going to virtual learning because the last week or two of the semester is not possible because the safety, the sense of safety, and probably actual safety on college campuses, some college campuses, is unsafe. And so they have shut down classrooms at some colleges. Buildings have been taken over by sit-ins. The grounds themselves have people are camped out. The vitriol that is being spouted against Jews, against Israel, against the Zionists is oppressive and filled with hate. I was told last week about an experience of a Bethel member who's a lobbyist. So he was down on Capitol Hill. He wears a kippah regularly, and so he was going, from one office to another office, and encountered in the hallway was a group of other people wearing keffiyehs and were shouting generally in the hallways about free Palestine and other things. And when they saw him, they confronted him. And he kept his cool and he just kept walking, right? But the intimidation of being Jewish is everywhere. So I'm not feeling cherutenu. I am not feeling a sense of freedom or of openness. I'm feeling constricted. I'm feeling a sense of the narrows. In Hallel that we beautifully sang together, there's a line that I have been thinking about, and it's been resonating with me and others I know as well. Right, the upbeat melody that we sing. Min hametzar karatiya anani v'merchavya. Min hametzar karatiya anani v'merchavya. Right, and goes on and on. It's a great melody. We sing it together, but let's slow down and see what the words are. Right? That from a narrow place, from a constricted place, I called out to God, and God answered me. But the psalmist was not feeling joyful, maybe on the second half of it, but the first half so speaks to me. Min hametzar, right? From the narrowness, the constricted place, from the burdened place, right? This is my emotions of what I'm feeling. I feel enemies surround me. If we go on in that same verse that we, again, sing so joyfully, it's on page 319 if you wanted to look, but you're familiar with it. If any nation surrounds me, right, then the next line, though they surround and encircle me, though they swarm around me like bees. Right? Each line 10, 11, 12, 13 of this psalm is just how we are feeling overwhelmed by our enemies. Verse 13, you pushed me hard that I might fall. I'm not feeling cherutenu. My anxiety is increased just walking through the day. And there's a natural response feeling this. One is that I just feel distracted. I can't fully concentrate on what's in front of me like I did before. Feeling uncomfortable, feeling worried. Or you might withdraw, feel powerless, feel despair. Or you can engage in the source of the anxiety, right, which we all want to do, but how do we really do that? How do we change this overwhelming hate that is different than I've ever experienced before in this country, directed towards us and sometimes directed towards each of us? One of the ways, of course, is to go to Israel, where the Chazan will be leading the next of our trips May 1st. And I know others have been to Israel with other organizations, right? But to feel connected to being there, to offer Israelis our chizuk, our strengthening, and in return, we also feel renewed. But there's a kind of a paradoxical dissonance here, that we are not slaves. Right? That's what the holiday is about. We theoretically have achieved freedom, but we have achieved freedom in so many ways. We have so many blessings, so many freedoms. But I'm not feeling emotionally free of this. There's a popular narrative, though it is an incorrect narrative, about who the oppressors are in this. It was clear in the story that Pharaoh is the oppressor to the Israelites. But I don't think that I came up with this. I must have read this someplace over the past 200 plus days. That both Palestinians and Israelis are acting as if they are oppressed. The college campus is portraying it as if the Palestinians are oppressed and the Israelis are the oppressors. And that's a very simple narrative. Doesn't require you to be nuanced or even to understand what actually any of the history is. It's a narrative of power dynamics that simply gets placed over as a template onto what they see, and it is wrong. Or I should say it's incomplete. What's interesting to me is that Israelis are also acting as they are oppressed, not by Palestinians, but by Iran, who's about to have a nuclear weapon, right? However, seems like every 2 weeks they say they're 2 weeks away from having enough plutonium for doing whatever scientists do with that. Right? But Israel is acting because it also feels that it is oppressed by Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran and all of the other dynamics around. And so we have two parties both responding from a place of being oppressed and of being under attack. And so therefore they completely miss each other. And then what is new in the last couple of weeks is that we have these college students who don't understand why they've been suspended from college, because they don't understand that there's consequences to whatever statements that they want. They are free to make statements, and they're free to accept the consequences of those statements. But these college students who are at the smartest, most elite universities, and at other universities as well, seem to not understand how to question, how to analyze, how to look at the world that is so complicated that if it was as simple as they say, it would have been solved by the world's smartest people decades ago. There's a picture of young Menachem Begin at a campaign rally back in his earlier days. He's, at first, when I saw this picture, I did not recognize him. He is not, like, I think when we talk about Menachem Begin, we have this image of him. Well, maybe we were all a little skinnier and energetic and things like that in our earlier days. Yeah. So, yeah, dark hair and he had this like crazy mustache, and it's worth looking. But he's standing at this podium. His arms are raised, very expressively extended, and the sign in front of him says Moledet v'Cherut. Okay, our homeland and freedom. And of course, Begin was in the minority of the Knesset for about 19 years as the head of the Cherut party, the Freedom Party. But I feel that both Moledet and Cherut are under attack. And not just in Israel. I feel that here in America and in Israel, I feel this dual attack. And so my anxiety comes from both of these, that here elections are under attack, freedoms are curtailed, reproductive health being limited, anti-Semitism on the rise, hate is on the rise from the left and from the right. That is in America and in Israel. And that the very nature of democracy in both countries is being challenged. So at our time of freedom, I've never felt more constrained or burdened or narrowed. This may have come up in some way at your Seder over the last 2 nights, right? And if it didn't, I'm sure it was a purposeful, we're not acknowledging or not talking about that. It may have come up as recognition of the hostages. It may have come up as recognition of college campuses. Whatever it might have been, I found that the Seder, my sister's Seder last night, that we didn't have any kids there, we went deep into this, and a feeling of amongst the adults that were there of how unsettling, to say the least, that we were each feeling. It's interesting, we leave Egypt and gain our freedom. That's this holiday. But the order of it, the sequencing of it is important, because we have to leave Egypt first before we get to Sinai. Right? Freedom doesn't just happen by itself. For freedom to happen, there has to that is part of the process of being prepared for Mount Sinai, for responsibility, for order, for law, for the boundaries. Because one might think that just having freedom is enough. Right? Where would that leave us, though? It would leave us completely hefker. Anyone could do whatever they wanted at any moment without any consequences. But Sinai has to come after freedom. Right? The two are in dialogue with each other. You can't take on law and obligation and responsibility until you've achieved freedom. And freedom was not the end goal. It is simply a tool to achieve obligations, Egypt, and then Sinai. And we even count the days leading up to Sinai. It is our preparation of exercising our freedom, of challenging our freedom, of trying the suit on, if you will, before the actual day. Part of me wants to think that maybe that's what teenagerhood and our 20s are also, in a sense. But I think that would be leaving the college campuses and being too generous to them. To say, they're young people, they'll grow and mature. Because the professors don't have that excuse. And the people on Capitol Hill don't have that excuse. So it helps me to zoom out a little bit and to understand the larger obligations I have to Am Yisrael and as part of Am Yisrael. Helps not to be pulled into the moment, but to see beyond the moment and beyond the immediate news cycle. Even though I can't help stop looking at the news, even though I know it is part of the source of my anxiety. It helps me to know that I have an emotional and spiritual resource as being part of the Jewish people that runs deep, and we may not even know it. We are not the first people to feel this type of narrowness and constriction. Remember earlier, Psalm 118. It's written 2,500 years ago. And he or she, they also felt that type of fragility, being surrounded by enemies, right? Again, verse 10, all the nations surround me. Verse 11, they surely surround me. They surround me. It repeats in the same verse. Verse 12, they completely surround me. And verse 13, you pushed me hard that I might fall. But the answer, I think, for me at this moment is found in the very next verse, verse 14. Ozi vezimrat ya vayehi li lishua. 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 God is my strength. I sing to God who rescues me. Part of the tradition which has seen adversity, and our tradition has been under siege before. We have been in narrow places. We have the capacity to stand strong and proud, even as we say in Vayhi Shamda, that in each generation an enemy will rise and try to destroy us. And we can stand proud and strong, knowing that they will not succeed. And at the same time, we must have empathy for others. It is not my job to translate how this moves into governmental policies in here or in Israel, but it is my job that those who do have those positions have a moral grounding which is far deeper and nuanced than the press reports. Et Zman Cherutenu, at this time of freedom, I pray for each of us to lean on each other at this difficult time as our receptors are ignited and so sensitive to everything that happens around us, overly sensitive, but that we have that inner strength and inner grounding and that peace at this Zman Cherutenu, and that peace will be extended to all of the children of Abraham. Am Yisrael Chai, and Chag Sameach.